Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll get the meeting started before you solve all our problems. No one has to be excused. And the minutes from November 7th were circulated. Would you like to move that circulated? Any discussion? All in favor? Any post-agenda items? Seeing none, can we have an adoption of the agenda? Lionel moves. All in favor? Okay, and we'll go to our development permit. Okay, go ahead. Take your time, Shanley.
Development permit 2019085 is for the construction of a solar facility. Tilly Solar received AUC approval in March of 2017, and their approval expired in March of 2019. The applicants are in the process of extending their AUC approval. The applicants provided the required Alberta Environment and Parks referral letter. The referral identifies a moderate risk to wildlife and wildlife habitat, as well as mitigation strategies to reduce these risks. The service life of the project is 25 years. However, it's expected that it may have a lifespan of up to 40 years. There is several setback variances detailed in the report, and the applicant is here and he will speak on those. There was no issues or concerns from staff. There was no response from adjacent landowners, and we're recommending approval with conditions. And Mr. Tagorny, am I saying that right? Yeah, is here to speak on the project.
Welcome. And just to give you an idea where everybody's from around the table, we'll go through quick introductions. And Lionel?
Good morning, Hebe Callan, Division 2, Tilly.
Good morning, Tracy Fife, Division 5, so I'm south and west around Brooks.
Good morning, Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Brian DeJong, and I represent the area around Dutchess.
Clarence Amulin, Rolling Hills.
Molly Douglas, and I'm from the northern part of the county, the area of Jam Finnegan.
Good morning, I'm Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Morning, I'm Kelly Chrisman. I'm from the west side of the county around Bassano.
Good morning, Wayne Hammergan, Division 4, which is Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City.
Good morning, Ellen Unra, and I represent the area around the village of Rosemary.
I'm Pam Elliott. I'm Admin Assistant Planning and Development.
Hi there, Ryan. Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services.
And I'm Ryan Turini. I'm based out of Calgary, and I do development for Canadian Solar. Canadian Solar wholly owns CS Tilly.
Okay, so go ahead if you're making a presentation, or is...
I don't have a formal presentation, but as a continuation of our strategy of building out our Suffield Solar project, we're now advancing 3 separate projects, including the Tilly facility in County of Newell. It was contracted to the Alberta Infrastructure Department of the Government of Alberta, in total with the 2 other solar facilities to supply about 55% of the electricity consumption of the province. So we're very excited to be able to build solar in this county, supply the needs of the province. This site for us is exceptional. It uses one of Alberta's best solar resources. It has an excellent connection to Fortis's existing distribution system and therefore does not require a build out of wires affecting landowners. And we're very enthusiastic about this project and the continuation of solar in the southeastern Alberta for economic development benefits and for clean electricity for Albertans.
Okay, so it looks from the presentation we're seeing would we like to start construction right after the new year and hopefully finish by winter of next year, sort of thing?
That would be perfect.
That would be perfect, yeah.
Doesn't always work that way, but that would be perfect.
Okay. Is there anything else, Shanley? Okay, we've all had the information. Are there any questions? Brian.
So you've mentioned that you have to apply for the AUC because that expired. What other I don't want to use the word obstacles, but what other challenges or technical stuff do you have to get in order for this to proceed or to get to a point where you can start construction?
So following today, assuming we can complete the development permit application, the next step would be to work with our constructors and to select a constructor. Canadian Solar typically doesn't construct directly, although we do have that capability in other areas. We don't have to reapply to the AUC for the Section 11 power plant permit, but we do have to extend it. Also, it was being held by Canadian Solar Solutions, our Canadian development arm, on behalf of CS Tilley. So we've requested the AUC transfer that permit with the extension to CS Tilley to hold directly. We understand from the AUC this week that that's largely complete, subject to some administrative paperwork. So we're comfortable that the permit will be extended. Next stage for us, though, is really to begin planning to get underway following this winter. We aim to use Canadian Solar solar modules, so that part's fairly straightforward. We're working on all the other major procurement, but it appears that everything's available in the construction time frame we foresee.
Any further questions? Trace?
I was just wondering if I could get some clarification on the setbacks that are required. I just want to make sure I understand it.
That's fine. I did list them in item I in my report. They're requesting no setbacks in between where the quarters are, and around the perimeter there is right-of-ways that they do have to have a setback from, and they've accommodated for that. But in between the quarters is where they're asking for a 0 setback so that they can have the panels straight across the quarter lines.
I think that's a very good description. For us, we first look at the constraints on the site. So in this case, subsurface infrastructure, pipelines and the like. We put appropriate setbacks to that infrastructure. Once we've accounted for those impediments on the site, those constraints to laying out solar rows, it's very important to us that we can have it be contiguous across the quarter section boundary to ensure that we can have a proper density of the facility. So it's key to the economics, but it's also key to fitting the amount of solar we wish to fit on this site.
So it's only where there are common boundaries, like in the middle, where you probably can't see at this time that there really is a correction line or whatever it is, any lines there, so yeah.
Well,
so it's the east-west line and the north-south one? Is it east-west and north-south?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I would just add, it's very common for us to develop in this manner worldwide.
Okay. Anything further? Yes, Molly.
I'm just curious because we just came back from our rural municipal convention, and reclamation always seems to be a topic, and you reference the reclamation in one of your items. Just curious as to the fear in the province or from some municipal leaders is that someday people will be owners of the panels and these setups will just be walking away from them, and then it'll be ultimately municipal money that has to go to clean them up. I just like to know what the reclamation plan is and how I can tell people that, oh, that won't happen.
Yeah, so I think it used to be on the honor system, and while it was on the honor system, because Alberta Environment and Parks hadn't put in place a strict guideline for energy facilities of this type, the facilities had very long design lives, so they had value in communities beyond. So it wasn't necessarily analogous to a conventional energy property that might have a decline rate, but now it is mandated by Alberta Environment and Parks. So we have to provide reclamation information to the province for approval. They scrutinize it very deeply, given it's a new program. We have to carry out a pre-site assessment before we begin construction so that we can properly ensure that following the facility's useful life, we truly bring it back to its original condition. So the comfort, I think, is not only are we on the honor system, we don't aim to leave anybody with facilities that aren't functional or valuable or don't have an owner, et cetera. But more than that, Alberta Environment and Parks now mandates how we plan for reclamation and how we demonstrate compliance with their requirements.
So it's on the province, basically, now to ensure that that takes place.
To monitor developers, to ensure that developers are planning appropriately and carrying out the right activities.
Yeah. One more question. Also, where is the closest, there's no problems from adjacent property owners? how far away is this from where people live? I know that EID and different people have responded. There's no concerns, but just
I don't
curious.
have that handy, but I can take the question.
So it's obviously not close to any. Yeah. So it's a long ways, I'm thinking.
The landowner of this property owns the quarters all around the proposed construction site, and the nearest house is over a mile from this location.
Okay.
I gotta double check that one, but it's quite far.
Yes, and that was that's what I thought. So I just wanted to double check. So
my best point of reference on the proximity is that we're compliant with the AUC's Rule 12 on acoustics. In this particular case, though, we had to use a virtual boundary. We're not meeting an acoustic guideline given a dwelling. So their dwellings are outside of where we would ordinarily have to measure the acoustics for the AUC. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Wayne?
What do you, after this project is finished, do you see grass in there, or, because I had an argument with some guys last night. They were saying that you go in with calcium and get it so nothing grows. What exactly do you do while it's running? What is on the ground?
Great question. So what we used to do is we used to grade all the sites. We used to try and get them flat like a tabletop, mostly in Ontario in our case. And we would reseed to native grass species after. More, we're trying not to do that. Alberta's flatter and it costs money to seed. So to the extent that we can preserve natural vegetation, we try to. It's not always possible. Sometimes we do have to do some grading, trenching, road construction. But we always return it back to a native vegetation case so that we can mitigate weeds. We do always try to put something in that isn't going to grow taller than our solar panels as well, just to avoid that constant grass cutting.
Anything further? If not, I'm ready for a motion. Yubi, move as recommended. Further? All in favor? That is passed. So you're set to go as far as we're concerned. You bet. And good luck. Okay, we have no post-agenda items. Nothing in camera. Question period. Seeing none, I'll adjourn the meeting.
All right, I will call our council meeting to order, and no one needs to be excused. Minutes from November the 7th. Approval or changes? Lionel?
I'll move approval.
Lionel's moving approval. No further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Post-agenda items. All right, we need a motion to adopt the agenda. Ellen moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Question period, notice of motion. Move on to bylaws. Bylaw 1956-19.
Good morning. This is for second and third reading of Bylaw 1956-19. The adjacent landowner is currently farming the lands adjacent to the road allowance as well as the road allowance. They were recently granted a development permit for a gravel pit in the southwest of 24. And so they are using the existing road that was built entirely in the adjacent landowner's property. So no part of that road is within the road allowance to access that gravel pit, and then they cross the road allowance. So this road is closed so that they can continue farming it. So it is recommended that council approve this bylaw for the purpose of closing to public travel.
Any questions for Maria? No? Seeing none? We need a motion for second reading. Kelly moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third and final reading, Tracy moves. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. So we'll go on to Bylaw 1957-19, item 7.2.
Okay, this is again for second and third reading of Bylaw 1957-19. On this map, that black portion of the road allowance has been closed by a previous bylaw. What's not shown on the map is a pivot that the landowner has recently installed, and that is also irrigating the portion of road on the north, so between the river and the already closed road allowance. So in order to make sure that all the portions that were being used were covered in this road closure, we're adding those two pieces of yellow road. So on the south side and on the north side that are cut off by the Bow River. This road allowance, because of the Bow River, is cut off from the grid, so there is no way to access that road allowance except by the river. So it is recommended that council give this bylaw a second and third reading.
Questions? Lionel?
I'll move second reading.
Lionel moves second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And motion for third reading, Anne Marie moves. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Maria, do you have other stuff today? All right. Well, you also have a good day. Todd, welcome. It's the first time it's perfectly coordinated for a while.
Happy to be here.
What the heck does that mean? You can get us guessing just by saying you're happy to be here.
It's not a very long meeting, so I plan to take up as much of your day as possible today. Just joking. All right, so I think we just have a couple quick things to go through. So just the Fieldman report. Is that, you like me to start there, Molly? Awesome. All right, so we did finish up roadside seating on October 29th. But Tina and Patricia were adamant they were going to get done before they left, and I think they were done on the 30th, so worked out really well. The rental stuff, I think, is all about the same as last year. The drill rentals kind of go up and down, usually by only a couple hundred acres, but usually the renter numbers are about the same. So kind of neat to watch that go up and down, probably just based on the different fields guys are using them for. Livestock equipment, same thing. I actually, when I stole the report from last year and was just updating the rental numbers, it was almost exactly the same. So kind of neat to see. And outside of that, I think we had a bigger year for strychnine this year, and we're still getting phone calls up until maybe even just a couple weeks ago. Guys were still seeing some gophers out, which is odd. Usually they're gone by this time of year. And then the barbecue still is one of our most popular rentals. So maybe because it's not a rental at all and it's just more of a borrow. Emerson was open a couple weeks longer this season. Definitely some people took advantage of it, and we still had our hunters that use it after the season as well. So I think our last guys are either just leaving or on their way out probably in the next week, and then we'll shut the power off entirely. I think the CCIP program, some of the word has gotten out that we're going to be running that program again, so thanks for that. We definitely get some phone calls this year during hunting when guys are seeing coyotes running around. We don't take any of the coyotes that were harvested during November for our program. If they have good fur or hide, they can still be sold that way, but just not for our $15. We did, Catherine did the Fort seed cleaning plants. She got them inspected. Everything was good to go, and they're going to be operating again this season, so that's positive. And then also with our environmental farm plans, I think I've mentioned this number a few times, but I thought it'd be great to have it wrote down. 39 producers have done environmental farm plans, and we have 8 more on the go currently. So I seen a wonderful gentleman in her office just before she went on holidays doing his final report. So that's good to see that's all coming together. And much of the push was for provincial funding. That was, you had to have an environmental farm plan to get that provincial funding. And most of those programs are closed now, that you don't need an environmental farm plan. So it's likely there's going to be less of a push. But I think the program itself has some merit, just to kind of take a step back and look at your properties and your farmyard from a different perspective. So it's still good to go through. If you know anybody that's willing or wanting to do that, we're happy to help them. And then, of course, the next thing we're going to talk about is the 2020 Provincial Conference, and that's being held by the Central Region in Banff, January 21st to 24th.
First off the bat, there is a council meeting set for the 24th, right? So we should be probably making a motion to dispose of that meeting, if that's possible, correct? Kelly?
I'll go ahead and make that motion to cancel January 23rd council meeting, as we'll be most of us away for that.
Lane or Kevin, would that be okay? If something comes up and we just have to have a different date. All right, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. To cancel. All right, what's next on that, Todd?
Yeah, sorry, just I guess we should probably get registered. I think we've got a couple weeks to do so, but wanted to bring forward here. We also need to pick who is going to be our voting delegates further resolutions. So I think some of I did attach the registration fees and the agenda for everybody to look at. Looks like a pretty decent agenda. We are celebrating 75 years of Ag Service Boards this year, or in 2020, I guess. So hopefully a little bit to be done on that. I think Brent Hoyland, probably most people know Brent Hoyland. He's been around forever. He was a Fieldman for 20 years, and then he's been a assistant CAO or a CAO in Flagstaff County for quite a number of years now. But he's a very, I don't know what the right word is, but he's very dynamic and he talks a lot, and he's been doing our AAAF historian type stuff for a long time. So that'll be a really good presentation to celebrate 75 years for sure. And then it looks like a little bit we're going to be talking more of what's coming down the pipe. A lot of hands-free talk and drones and all that kind of jazz. So should be a great conference.
So Todd, when's the final date for submitting registrations?
Great question. December 15th, unless we want to pay an extra $100, which I don't think we want to do.
December 15th?
Yep.
Okay. Is that all happening at the one location?
It is, yeah. And we went ahead and booked some rooms already.
Good.
Just to make sure we had some. Because I think when I talked to the organizers, they had reserved 400 rooms, which is right around what we normally get. But I wanted to make sure that we all got to be together.
Nice. So I'm not sure yet if I'm going. Is there anyone else who is not going for sure? So no Clarence, I'm a question mark. Anyone else? Everybody else is in? Lionel, you're a question mark? Okay. So the question marks need to let you know before December 15th, Todd, right? Perfect.
Yeah, the sooner the better, but we'll go ahead and get everybody else registered right away.
Anything else on that?
Yeah, if we wouldn't mind, I guess if we know that the other 7 are going, maybe we could pick 2 to be our voting delegates.
Perfect. Wayne?
I nominate Tracy.
Tracy, will you accept that responsibility? Do you want to nominate another person while you
Brian.
nominate? Brian? Perfect. Brian, you're okay? Brian. Brian and Tracy will be the voting delegates. Any questions for Todd on his presentation, or Wayne? Oh, we need to vote on that, I suppose, right? The voting delegates. So Wayne has moved that Tracy and Brian be our voting delegates at the conference. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Now, any other questions? Wayne?
How much is the rental on the drills?
$9 an acre.
Oh, okay. Because I got to rent one next year.
Yeah, no more trips for you.
Do you guys like your old new table?
It's hardly recognizable. It's amazing.
It does look good. I think when we were talking with Darcy, when they installed it, they had some problems getting the stain to set in properly. So every time they tried to get it the same old color, where it was a little bit lighter, it didn't work properly. So I think he said they took them 5 tries. They had to keep planing it down and putting a new stain on. So it is quite a bit darker, but I think it looks okay here.
Appreciate the time and effort you put into it, Todd. Yes, looks great. Anne-Marie?
So Todd, you took some parts at the end and then also in the middle?
No, the parts came just from the middle. So I think there's Lane went and looked at them. There's 2 4-foot by 7-foot chunks that came out of the middle.
Where did they go?
Well, we had a little bit of discussion about that, what to do with them. I know there's been some interest in people wanting them, but we were thinking about maybe putting one in our boardroom. We have a kind of a good space for that, and I'm not sure about the other one, but it'd be good to use them someplace for sure. No, not for firewood, for sure.
No. So 2 4-by-7 chunks came out of that. So we were talking this morning about how long it used to be. So it was...
Yeah, it was 8 feet longer than what it is now.
And it all came out of the middle.
Yeah.
So the ends were always like that. How fast we forgot. You could have brought in a picnic table. Oh, okay.
So Todd, were those 4-foot stretches, were they straight at the ends, or are they still kind of curve out? Does it get wide? Did it get wider?
Yes, it got a little bit wider, and it was what it kind of looks like now. It's got the points, but it used to be all rounded, so it was just kind of one big ovalish type.
A slow round.
Slower curve.
Yeah. Ellen?
What I really like is the projector is there and I can see all the presenters. Wonderful. Before I couldn't. With this, from this angle, this is beautiful. I can actually see all the presenters. Thank you.
Because it's a bigger table. Well, you did a fine job amongst all of you, so thank you.
Do we have a picture of the old one?
Pardon me?
Does anybody have a picture of the old table?
We were just foster parents. We hadn't taken the big step. We protected it from who knows who. Yes, Hubie.
Have you got any feedback from other municipalities on the Hawk platforms?
No, not from other municipalities, I don't believe. I don't know anybody else that offers that as a program. Was Will supposed to look into other municipalities?
Vulcan has some.
Some private landowners do?
Toward the river, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing nothing else, thank you, Todd.
If you want to support this greasy mustache, feel free to go on to
Movember? We got lots of Movember happening.
Would cost money to raise. You're supposed to be protecting men from prostate cancer and other health, just like breast cancer, where it has nothing to do with drugs.
We need a motion to accept the Ag Fieldman's report. Lionel moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Oh my goodness, I missed this discussion. I'm so excited. Graphic standards policy. I'm going to open it all over again. And no, I'm just kidding. So, there were some options last time. And they remain unchanged, right?
Yeah, I'm sticking with my original recommendation. I did do the 3 that were requested, so they're on the second page of my RFD. You can see them. Please discuss.
Since we only have one graphic designer in the room, I think we should just take her opinion.
Any other ideas? So it would be option 1.
Yeah, so option 1 is the one on the first page that just switches the number 4 with the word of, with minimal visual disturbance, I guess is the best way to put it.
It's this one, though. Yeah, this is. Tracy?
Well, I'm not a graphic designer, but I do like it with the newel a little bit bigger on the bottom. I do like that, I like how you have the county of is centered in the outline of the map, but I do like it with newel a bit bigger. It just stands out more in my mind.
Any other suggestions? Brian?
I like what the after on the proposal. I think the newel is Ariana said, it's squeezed in there a little bit too tight, and it's a subtle change, and I'm fine with it. And I would make that motion for the after in option 1.
No concerns? No further concerns? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. You know what I would have done? I'm saying it now, so you can't discuss it. I get rid of the word county of altogether. Oh, that came up, did it? Anyhow, it's all lovely. It's just fine. No one will notice. Let's move on to Councillor payment sheets. Item 10.2, compensation review. Any questions on that? Brian?
Well, and this is just in reference to my own, with the Bizanal spillway, I don't think I was consistent with the other ones. I might have had one more hour in there, so please adjust mine to that. We didn't talk about how much to put down, and I didn't consult with anybody, so it's my bad. I wasn't sure what time. I looked at what time we got home, but the ones that I was carpooling with, we stopped for lunch, and so anyways, I wanted to be consistent with the others, so. Yep.
-4? Oh, I got you, okay. 4 seemed like a lot. Gotcha. Any other changes? All right, we need a motion to accept. Kelly moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And we have a check for payment over $350,000. So we need a motion to pay that check. I think it's to Acon or somebody. Tracy? Tracy makes that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then there is the regular payment register for council. Were there any questions on there? If there are no questions, we can have a motion to approve or accept that register. Thanks, Tracy. Just seems like sometimes it's so hard for people to make motions. Okay, all in favor of that? Opposed? Motion is carried, which takes us to committee reports. committee reports today. And Lionel, do you want to take it away with the Airport Commission, please?
I tried to send you some information. It didn't work very well for me. So just that AWAS system, that aviation weather, what is that, Brian? Aviation weather
Automated weather observation system.
Okay. We did sell it. It's a used piece of equipment. We were pretty happy to get rid of it. We sold it for $15,000. And so it's dead and gone. That's about all I had to report.
So that money obviously will stay within the budget, Lionel?
We had a little discussion about that, and we put it into reserve for now. And I don't know. I think that's the proper way to go, because we do have breakdowns. We do need funds to deal with those, so a little reserve there doesn't hurt.
All right. No questions. We'll move on to Crime Stoppers, Rural Crime Watch, Safe Communities.
Okay, next Safe Communities meeting will be in January, because hardly anybody shows up for the budget, so it used to be in December, so they moved it to January. Rural crime, everybody knows about Jolene Fraser moving to St. Paul, and applications are out to replace her in that position here in Brooks. Next provincial convention for rural crime will be Grand Prairie. And that'll be February 21st to the 22nd. AGM for the Brooks area will be January 25th at the Heritage at 4 p.m. And there was a mention of doing a membership drive, possibly at the Bandits games, summer rodeos, and possibly having a casino too to raise some funds. And then we discussed dash cameras, which are very helpful in things that are going on in the county, in the country. Have them on your vehicles. It helps a lot if there's crimes being committed. And our next meeting is December 9th.
Questions for Hubie? All right, we'll keep on going. Grasslands. Clarence.
Okay, for FCSS, just although our funding has stayed the same at FCSS, a lot of our partners are being hit fairly heavily. And we're still trying to determine exactly by how much and so forth, but spec is certainly in the neighborhood of somewhere around $600,000 because the Links program is gone. So we'll probably be trying to reorganize all of those types of things a little differently. That'll be under some type of discussion, but in the area, I think somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million is going to be missing in action, and that certainly will cause some difficulties. And I think we'll try to keep everybody together because of the fact that everybody can apply for the new money, which is less than what was in total there before, and so I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge to keep everyone together so that we're not competing with each other on who gets the funds, and we'll see how that works. But yes, definitely some real challenges there. We also had an NRSC meeting yesterday, and we have stayed with as far as our budget for the next year is concerned, we are staying with our regular 5-cent increase. which kind of covers some of the additional inflationary pressures, but also the fact that we've been trying very hard to become more into the medium of where our employees are being paid with like type operations. We've always been behind a little bit. We've tried to do it slowly, but we took a little bit bigger step this time just to make sure that we remain competitive with everybody else in like operations in the province. As far as our savings are concerned, we will have to sometime change the filters in there. We haven't put as much water through as we thought originally we would have to. So those dates are being pushed back, but right now in reserves, at the end of the year, we should have just under $3 million, which doesn't cover that cost yet, but I think we're healthy. We had a good year in 2019. It allowed us to put more dollars into the reserves so that when some of these things do become due, but because we don't have a new plant anymore. It's already 10 years old, if you can believe that. So as repairs have to be done and as things have to be renewed, we certainly, I think, are in a position to do that, and hopefully we'll not have to come with cap in hand to our member municipalities, which is something we've always been striving for, and I think the path is correct with what we're doing at 5 cents increase every year, which has served us well. And Brian, if you want to add anything, but that's kind of where we're at.
Questions? No questions on FCSS or NRSC? Lots of acronyms. All right. Palliser Economic Partnership has a tick beside it. Wayne.
Well, Brian and I went to that meeting, and it was basically about the dark fiber, and I came out of the meeting, well, everybody's willing and bound like to have it, but nobody wants to pay for it, so we'll see how far I'm going to talk to the EID tonight and see what they're up to. Basically, we just go with what's happening so far.
Okay.
If I could add,
yeah, Brian.
It was interesting. So Dr. Linda Bernard, she's the regional, I don't know if it's called a manager, but she's the regional person for the CRTC in Western. So she was there, and I think that part was well worth it, because she provided some insight into the way the CRTC, what they can do and what they can't do. I mean, we seem to think that, at least I did, that the CRTC is able to control everything when it comes to, our communications. And she said, we really don't. She said, we can't regulate the internet, and we can't get involved in the market. They can limit authority and they can do some other things, but their ability to control organizations is really dependent mostly on the market. I think, and this isn't new, I think the big challenge is how to achieve more spectrum within, to get more space on that spectrum within the wireless arena. And right now, the big companies, the Teluses, Bell, Shaw, they own most of that spectrum, and they have the wherewithal to continue to purchase it. And so you end up with, some smaller companies that, where they play on the fringe, and I think CIC Wireless, they've done amazing things, but they are fighting against it's a little puppy fighting in against the dog, and it's not always easy, but I think they're committed to this community, to the community of Southern Alberta. They've done some really interesting things. They talked about, fiber to wireless and stuff that, well, they lose me in about 5 seconds. But the thing is, it's exciting because I think there's, you know, there's so many more opportunities. You know, 5G is being talked about, and how that fits into the fiber thing. It's going to become important. The one thing that I wrote down here that highlighted is all of them said, you know, partnerships are the only way this is going to get built. And you know, by that they alluded to public, private, you know, municipalities if they're involved. And, you know, we have an extension of that with the EID. I mean, they're not a municipal organization, but they do fit that role within our community. And I think we're unique that way. But at the same time, you know, it needs to be recognized that there's limitations to what they can do too. So I'm like you, Wayne. I'm curious to see if, you know, how quickly you keep up to this stuff too, because it's changing so fast. And I'm curious to see the EID's comments and that, you know, what their goals and projections are for the next few years also. So,
Wayne?
And along that same line, I agree with Brian. I think the way we're going to get this is through partnerships. And I was thinking CCIL and the EID, if they could get, I'm going to mention that tonight, that both of them have infrastructure that they could use. And if they can get together, it would expand everything and maybe cover costs a little bit easier too. So there's lots of options. This 5G or whatever it is, there were some interesting things mentioned there, how much more we can expand. And yeah, but like Brian, everything was mostly going like that over me.
So similar message to the presentation at RMA then, regarding the partnerships. Totally, yeah. I'm glad you guys got to hear that lady. I really enjoyed the time I heard her at a Southwest Mayors and Reeves. She knows her stuff. She knows the shortcomings of the system, but you're right. We think the CRTC has a lot more power than it does. Yeah. Good. Rec boards. That looks like Tracy's printing.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of just bring a few things forward. We had a meeting last night, and on our board structure, we've been missing a few members at large for quite some time, and we're at the city. We brought in 2 new members last night, and so the city members at large are full, and the county is still, for our Division 5 and 10, we're still missing 1 person, but it sounds like we maybe have 2 individuals that maybe want to step up for that. So that was really good. Our subcommittee for the outdoors committee are going to be looking at the pathway system through Brooks and working on sort of a connector. There's bits and pieces of walking paths throughout the city, so we want to try to get some connectors going and that kind of thing to expand that. In the future, they're going to be looking at doing another 10-year master plan for recreation. And the last one was done was in 2010, so it's 10 years, of course. And in that 2010 study, there was actually lots of things that were completed. And so, like, one of the things, like, I guess at that time they brought in an outside consulting firm that did the research, and they said, yeah, it was one of the studies that wasn't put on the shelf, that they referred to it quite often. And just one of the things that this company had projected was that a bowling alley was needed, and then it ended up that Ben's Bowling wanted to open, and so they kind of assisted them with getting some funding to do that. So they kind of look at the whole community and sort of what's needed and that kind of thing. So that'll be kind of exciting to look. A couple of things that we've kind of talked about possibly would be, actually Dr. Grobler brought forward a proposal. He'd like to see a BMX park attached to the skateboard park, like they've got that big green space there. So something like that. Twinning the CRA has been something that's been on the topic for a while, I guess since they built the CRA. And just more outdoor paths, walking pathways, but this will all happen over the next, I don't believe they'll probably start looking for firms to do the study, but it won't start actually, I think, till next year that they'll actually start doing the nuts and bolts of it. They'll be reviewing their joint use agreement with the schools, because the schools use all the rec facilities for swimming lessons and stuff like that. And currently the swimming lessons through the schools are free, right? They don't pay to come in to use the facilities because it's during the day when nothing else is there. So they're going to be looking at that and kind of working with the school systems to see what can be done and what more they could do. And I think that's about it. Is that about right? Okay. Whoops.
We'll do the Shortgrass Library report, and then we'll go on to our 11 o'clock delegation.
Okay, so at Shortgrass, we had our annual election, and Dwight from Red Cliff stayed on as chair by acclamation, and I stayed on as vice chair. And Craig Widmar was elected by acclamation as well as treasurer. So that is in place for the coming year. I'll send around the plan of service. It's done up like a placemat for easy referral and that sort of thing. We approved the 2020 budget with a 2% decrease. So that letter will be coming to administration here, and then we'll require a motion to accept that lower expected requisition by 2%, which is always a good thing. IT, we have a huge IT department at Shortgrass. We provide all the internet services for all the libraries in the system, and we just approved 7,000. I just want to normalize our IT department, maybe a $7,000 migrate server, and also a $28,000 firewall. So just so you know, it's all over the place. IT is, and it's needed for all the safety and all the privacy that we need. And I think that is all for Shortgrass. Business as usual.
Questions? Thank you, Kelly. We do have a couple of things left, but we'll just leave them till after our delegations. So Glenda and Jeff, please join us at the table in front there, and welcome.
Very much.
I know you've met us all before, but it's always nice to be reminded where people come from and how big our rural areas are. So we'll start with some introductions. Of course, I'm Molly Douglas, and I am in the northern part of the county, the Gem, Finnegan, Duck Lake area. And I'll move over to Lionel.
Good morning, Lionel Juss. From the center of the county, Division 10, which is north and east of Berks.
Good morning, Hubie Kellen, Division 2, Tilly.
Good morning, Tracy Fife, and I represent around south and west, so Castles, Lake Mill Resort, this area here.
Good morning, Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Brian DeJong, around the village of Dutchess.
Clarence Amulong, and I live in Rolling Hills.
Welcome back, Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Hi, I'm Kelly Chrisman from Bazzano area.
Hi, Wayne Hammergren from Division 4, which is Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City.
Good morning, Ellen Unra, and I represent the area around the village of Rosemary.
Good morning, Ariana Nielsen, Executive Assistant.
Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services.
Okay. And I'm Glenda Farndon, Senior Municipal Relations Liaison for STARS.
And I'm Jeff Morris, Director of Operations for Southern Alberta.
Thank you. And we have Bruce with us from the Brooks Bulletin today.
Good night.
So,
Thank you.
welcome, and we'll just let you begin your little report.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we want first and foremost, on behalf of all of our VIPs, or very important patients, we thank you tremendously for our partnership, a partnership that does save lives. So this is the budget slide that I bring to you every year. For about the last 3 to 4 years, it's pretty much been status quo. Not much has changed. On the expenditure side, 3/4 of the pie represent aviation and medical components, and the smaller pieces continue to be base operations, education, and administration costs, which we still remain for the 3rd year now at 15%. CRA allows up to 35%, so we feel like we are very much doing our due diligence to keep administration costs in check. On the funding side, now we are still in an affiliation agreement with Alberta Health Services, a 10-year affiliation agreement, which is due to expire next year. So I can assure you we are at the highest level of discussions right now with government as to where we might go forward with that. So for currently still in the same 20% government funding. But as well, this year, the change has been that they did offer us a one-time top-up of a little over $2 million. So it represents 24%, or just over $9 million block funding this year, rather than the $7 million that we receive every year that is part of that 10-year agreement. So in addition to that, STARS Lottery is our largest single funding source. And the last 2 years, there's been lots of challenges, and for the first time in 25 years, the last 2 years, we did not have a sellout, and that really did hurt us. But this year, as of April, this year's lottery, we had a sellout. And that represented an additional $1.5 million. So it really does make a difference, and when people say, well, maybe it doesn't really make that much of a difference if I buy a lottery ticket this year. It does, and that's one of the reasons that we have always maintained having a $25 ticket. There are some families and people that want to support, but they can't afford at a $100 level. So, we have always maintained that we have the $25 ticket, single ticket available, and that makes a huge difference in everyone being able to support. As far as calendar campaign just seems to kind of hold its own. Here's the new one this year for this coming year. It always maintains somewhere between $800,000 to $1 million every year. People say that, they're eventually going to be phased out. People don't use them that much anymore, but people want to support, and they really want to read those patient stories, so it continues to hold its own. And then we have site registration program. Now that has been down for the last 3 years as well, but rightfully so. Industry has not been as busy. There's been lots of challenges in oil and gas, and this particular program is largely used by oil and gas sector. But we are starting to see it come up again a little bit. So in previous years, we would be more around the $4 to $4.5 million mark, as this is our only revenue generating program. So you can see that it's been down significantly, but again, we are seeing some rise in a lot of companies calling in and wanting to establish their permanent sites, as well as some new ones coming on board. So I think that that is, a positive as we go forward for oil and gas. So in the meantime, it does leave a significant amount of funds that have to be fundraised every year. So I wanted to bring you an idea of where are we at with the Rural Municipal Initiative across Alberta, as well as into northeastern BC. So everything that you see is green is a partner. They are, like yourselves, a part of the Municipal Initiative Program, recognizing STARS as a part of their emergency protective services, giving an annual donation, whether it is, or contribution, whether it is on a per capita amount or up to a significant dollar value in their emergency protective services budget annually. So we have, just to give you kind of an idea, about 70% of all across Alberta, including northeastern BC, the 7 districts within Peace River Regional District, are all contributing anywhere from a $2 per capita up to, we have one municipality giving $90 per capita, which, and to give you an idea of what kind of dollars are we looking at, this ranges up to, we have 3 different municipalities that chose to take a specific dollar value and put it into emergency protective services annually at a $200,000 per year rate. They're doing this on behalf of all of us in Alberta, that we continue to have STARS services available to us, and that, you know, it's not, it is more about looking towards that emergency protective services and having that available to your residents, but also to your neighboring municipalities. This is showing real partnership. We're currently at almost 90% of the entire province is participating. So collectively, currently, on an annual basis for sustainability of STARS services for 3 bases in Alberta, we are generating $1.8 million per year. That's pretty significant in the big scheme of things. That's a lot of money that doesn't have to be technically, you know, fundraised as far as a, you know, a community barbecue and all of those. It takes hundreds of those to try and generate $1.8 million per year. So again, this united effort is so, you know, it's invaluable in what we are being able to achieve together. Currently, we have 7 municipalities that have reached logo recognition, meaning that they are represented on the helicopters that serve Alberta. So they've either reached a $500,000 level or a $1 million level. 5 of those listed are over $1 million level collectively now. The new news is that this year, in July, Rocky View County reached a $500,000 level in giving, and they had their logo unveiled on the brand new H-145 that's serving out of Calgary. In addition, we are continuing to have more and more interest from villages and town councils as well, saying we've heard from our county and we would like to do our part and we want to be a part of the program. So we have welcomed 7 new towns or villages this year. And so giving you a kind of idea where the red stars are at is how many current towns and villages we have on board also with the program. Flagstaff County, now you'll see kind of a circle of stars there, as well as around Wheatland County. Flagstaff County chose that they wanted to make a contribution regionally on behalf of all of their towns and villages within their boundaries. So that is what they are doing as far as to show complete support within their county. And then Wheatland County did the same, and as far as inviting me to a regional quarterly meeting where all of the other reeves were able to, you know, attend, and I brought them information. And so when town of Strathmore came on board this year, they now have all towns and villages within their boundaries also on the program. So that is just another way where there's significant leadership being demonstrated as we continue to work together for annual sustainability. So when we look at critical care missions within a county of Newell itself, now I have included the critical care transfers from the 2 hospitals. I know that that's not, you know, they're separate municipalities from yourselves as far as the rural areas, but it's really important to remember too, a lot of these critical transfers may have been from ground transfers from rural areas to the hospital, and now STARS is being called in order to take those transfers to a higher level of care. You know, maybe the patient is deteriorating rapidly, and so it's important that we really understand how many missions are actually happening throughout your immediate area. So if we take off the critical care transfers, you're probably seeing on an average 5 to 6 missions per year within your county itself from the rural areas. But when we take even just a portion of those critical care transfers that are most likely from rural areas, then we're seeing a significant change. So an annual average of about 3 missions per year. It's also important to remember about our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is all of the areas, the neighboring municipalities that you border with. We all travel, we commute for work or recreation. It's really important that we kind of look at the broader picture as to, you know, what's happening in our neighborhood. Most likely, accidents do not usually happen at home. They are, you know, you're in other areas, and there's other neighboring residents that are coming through Newell County as well. So when we look at the broader picture, now we're seeing in the exact same time frame as here, that now we are at 572 missions throughout our immediate area. As far as the fleet recap, you know, I did present to you last year that we are tackling a capital campaign. Originally, it started out as a $117 million capital campaign for 9 helicopters in total to serve Western Canada. And then, of course, in December of last year, Saskatchewan government announced that they would be providing funds for 1 helicopter in Saskatchewan, followed by Alberta Health Services that said they would follow suit and provide funds for 1 helicopter in Alberta. And then federal government, for the first time, not looking at STARS as a provincial service now, but looking at what we are actually providing across Western Canada with 6 bases in 3 provinces, serving 4 provinces when we include Eastern BC. So with a $65 million grant to pay for 5 helicopters to serve Western Canada, we are now left with a $26 to $30 million capital campaign for the remaining 2. Each helicopter is $13 million. Also, to add on, it's a very extensive training program for the pilots, and we have 2 bases left. That's about $1 million per base to provide for the training as well as coverage of pool pilots, while all those pilots from that particular base are away for training. So about $1 million each there for the remaining 2, plus the fact that we are leaving a little bit of room for contingency, because at the time that we finally get the last of the 3 helicopters, probably at the end of 2022, it is in US dollars, and we have no way of predicting what that cost will be at that time. So a little bit of contingency, which is why we see the $26 to $30 million range for what we still are in a capital campaign, in addition to the $20 million we normally have to generate for operations annually. So May of this year, we took delivery of number 1 and number 2 helicopters. Number 1 became operational in Calgary as of July. Number 2 started being very busy with training all of the other bases. In September, number 3 arrived in Saskatoon and is now operational. We have placed the order on the assembly line for number 4, 5, and 6, because we do have to place that way ahead of time. They do not keep helicopters on used cars lots like cars, you know, where we can just go and pick one out. So we have placed that order and expect delivery probably in spring of 2021, which remains that we are currently placing the order for number 7, 8, and 9 as well, and expect delivery somewhere between the end of 2021 and 2022 for the final 3, and hoping by then that we also have completion of this remaining $26 to $30 million for the capital campaign. So that is the current plan. After the fact, we do expect to disperse of the BKs. We are not going to disperse of them until we have a complete fleet. We want to be ensure that we still have, if there's maintenance or anything else, we still have helicopters at our availability to respond to all calls. So we will disperse or, see what the market is for them at that time, or whether they may have to be parted out because, they're no longer making parts now, which is what pushed us into a capital campaign to begin with. So that will be determined at that time. But until then, we are continuing. Calgary is the only base that is maintaining operation of both the H-145 and BK-117s. Jeff, I'm going to let Jeff, because he's our paramedic and has all this medical knowledge. This is our brand new sneak peek of the new medical interior. Lots of great new aspects. Jeff?
And without getting into too much crazy detail, which might be over some people's heads, this represents just the interior. It's really a flying ICU. If I can point out a couple things, I should have brought a laser pointer, but probably some new additions. If you have seen the old helicopter, we've moved from a triple channel pump, so when we can put 3 IV lines in, to a single channel pump, and may seem a bit ubiquitous, but considering the fact, say if you have a 3-channel pump and you have medications running, if one of the channels actually breaks, it's kind of off. So this is a bit of more of a risk mitigation, if you will, to go to single channel pumps. Got the bridge over the stretcher is actually, it's a very important piece. It allows us to not encumber any patient care, any issues. We can take this traveling into the hospitals. Normally we'd have to take all the bags and kits and shoulders and whatnot, so this allows us to better access the patient with the appropriate equipment, so we're not looking all around the aircraft. And really, the whole left side where the bottles of water are, that's really where the equipment tree is, so it's quite accessible. Formerly from the BK-117, if you look on more of the water bottle side, it was formerly a bench. This too also has capacity to carry 2 patients. It's very rare. I can tell you in the history of STARS in 34 years, we've actually carried less than 1% of our patients have actually been a double patient mission. And considering the fact, I think it's really important to understand the types of patients we're carrying. It's, you can watch TV, movies and whatnot. If somebody's wheeling a critical patient into the hospital, there's, the doctor and nurse, another nurse taking vitals, another one putting an IV, somebody recording. There's 8 to 10 people around, and we've got 2, a nurse and paramedic. So double patient transports with critical care is really difficult. We use it primarily mostly if it's in an MCI situation or multi-patients of fire evacuation access, that kind of aspect. To go along, these you can see it's a chair, not a bench. So these are actually retractable, movable. They are able to spin, so better ergonomics for the crew, because it's a pretty tight space if you haven't seen those before. And yeah, it's probably really the only big highlights for the interior.
Thank you. There's always no difference than cars or vehicles. There's such changes in technology over the years, and medical equipment's the same way. There's always something new and up and coming that's better and greater, so we always strive to stay on the state-of-the-art, highest level of technology, including, the fact that, we have blood on board now. We are the only in Canada that has that capability of bringing life-saving blood that can be accepted by any one of us. And that's an important piece, and we are seeing significant changes in saving lives just with the fact of being able to have blood on board. So in closing, I want to say thank you very much again. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your dedication to your residents, but even more so on behalf of your bordering neighbors. Thank you for your dedication and leadership to your neighbors. Together, we have a solid commitment to safety and creating a quality of life for all. We thank you for your continued support. You've been at the $2 per capita rate per year annually. We very much appreciate that, as that is part of that $1.8 million per year sustainability. As the missions come in, the missions start to rise. When we look back to the history of STARS, as I presented before, In the first few years of STARS out of Calgary only, like we flew 50, 60 missions a year. Last year, we were just short of 3,000 missions across our 6 bases across the 3 provinces. We're not flying 50 missions anymore, and that requires some great commitment from everyone as a united effort. So together, we will continue to fight for life. I wanted to share one story with you that I have recently had another councillor who approached and said she wanted to share a story, and that as a councillor and part of her county municipal district, that they have contributed to STARS every year, and that, we are a line item in their budget, and that is set in stone, so to speak. And she said they did that always because on behalf of their residents and worrying about what's happening in their own backyard. But she said it never came full circle to her until her and her young family were on a holiday in southeastern BC, and her little boy had an incident and had to be flown by STARS to Children's Hospital. She said then, and only then, did the picture become much bigger in the aspect that here she is on holidays in another province that really doesn't even have STARS, and they still had access to STARS and at no cost to their family. So now, she said, she just wanted to share that. Now she gets it. Across Western Canada, your partnership represents so much more. So I want to thank you again and say that partnerships really do save lives. And we thank you for the partnership we have with County of Newell.
Thanks, Glenda. And Jeff, questions? I just was thinking as you were speaking, does this type of service exist anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, quite a bit. Our probably national comparison would be somebody like Orange. So although it's provincially run, helicopters, ground ambulance, and rotor wing, they do have critical care component, as does BC. They also do have a critical care component with they've got jets, fixed wing aircraft, rotor wing as well. So they have a critical care specialty group that runs out of Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah. Brian?
You mentioned your capital replacement program. What kind of reserves do you have in capital, for capital reserves?
Okay. As far as towards the capital, towards the project itself, you mean? Or
Well, you had one slide there that highlighted that you have your capital replacement program for the helicopters. I'm just curious what your reserves are in the capital budget.
Well, right now,
It's a good question. I'll come
That's a
back
good-
to you. Yeah.
Okay.
I am sorry, I can't answer that question because currently, as presented, we have received the government funding as far as, basically paring it down. It pays for 7 of the 9 in total from all of the provincial and federal government. And we're still in campaign mode as far as, so I think in my way of thinking, we don't have anything in reserve yet other than the fact that, we're still in campaign mode to raise the rest of the money. And then at that time, we will have some cushion, hopefully with, depending what happens when we disperse of the AW139s as well as the BK117s. But we don't know at this time, what that's going to look like because we don't know if there's still going to be a market for the BK117s or whether or not it's just going to be, they'll be parted out. So I'm sorry, I can ask further for you, but I'm sorry I don't have an answer to that.
I think most of the people around the council are going to know what I'm going to talk about, but I live in the of the and until, I don't know when it was, but there was a where STARS started. They couldn't reach that area. So, and the county itself, we support both STARS and HALO, and I realize that there's good cooperation, I think very good cooperation, but I can't help but wonder if there isn't duplication as well. And so I often struggle with the fact that we can't have one overseeing organization. I really do, because we use both in our area.
Mm-hmm.
And, you meet and you transfer but I still think, and I know you both have boards governing you, so do they ever talk about what efficiencies they could have between the two of you?
Well, I think just being under an affiliation agreement for the last 10 years, it's stale to this point. There are other services that have, with Halo, there's Hero up north, there's actually, what's that other, there's another helicopter service outside of Grand Prairie. Anyway.
MPC.
Hey? No, for us. So I know that there's actually our CEO and our COO are meeting with Alberta Health Services to understand kind of what the landscape looks like, how do we move along together. But as far as it is, we do have the medical oversight with regards to our transport physicians, and we do, like you just said, Councillor, that we do quite often do rendezvous with them. We dispatch Halo and Hero and other helicopter services around the province. We work in partnership with Alpine Helicopters. So I understand what you're saying with regards to duplication. Speaking just on behalf of STARS, besides having the Emergency Link Center, the transport physician, medical oversight, critical care trained paramedic and nurse, and just with the integration within the province, it's not indifferent than what we use in our partnerships with other chain of survivals, with other chain of survival partners. Search and rescue out of Cochrane, Alpine out of Kananaskis for mountain rescues. So there are parts of the province that actually require some logistics and coordination. And as far as it is, we're working in partnership with everybody we can in the chain of survival for the patient. I know it's a difficult situation.
At the same time, I think you have to recognize we're both rapid transport, but STARS is also critical care. So we're bringing that airborne intensive care unit environment. We're bringing the blood on board. We're bringing world-class critical care expertise between the paramedic, the advanced life support paramedic, the critical care nurse, and the transport physician that's on the radio all the time. And they are the ones making the decisions once a call is deemed critical. It is STARS transport physicians that make all the medical decisions for that patient, regardless of how they are transported. So those are all additional aspects that need to be considered when you want to provide the best services you can for your area.
And I might have missed this, but you're going to try and put in service 7 helicopters in Western Canada.
9.
Northern BC and the 3 prairie provinces, right? Am I wrong?
That's
Correct?
the area that we're serving.
Yeah,
is Eastern BC and Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba.
Right. What is the total operating cost per year for all of it?
Just under $80 million, I believe. 78 might be in this thing here.
64 operating.
Revenue.
So operating budget is about 64 a year for all 6 bases. So we, on average, say it's about 10 per base. There, of course, there's going to be some anomalies. Like Calgary, we have 2 aircraft. Of course, we have a higher call volume, where Grand Prairie has 1 aircraft and a lower call volume.
That's right.
Edmonton does have a couple aircraft, and obviously they've got the AW139 and the BK, so it's a different fuel, different maintenance scheme. So costs vary, but on average, it's about 10 million per base.
And now you have fundraising campaigns right across all 3 provinces then also?
It's on a different aspect. Currently, like in December of last year, Saskatchewan signed a new 10-year affiliation agreement at 50% government funding and 50% fundraising. In the last 6 years, we've started a Saskatchewan lottery as well that's quite successful. We are, originally, when we signed a 10-year agreement with Manitoba Health, because they just, originally, just a little history, we went there to help them with the flood situation on a contract basis using a backup helicopter. The year after, then they were in the same situation, so they called us back asking for help, but they said, this time, please don't leave, we will figure this out. And so they currently started at 100% government funding in Manitoba. But each year they're trying to scale back to get to more of a Saskatchewan or Alberta type model. So they've started reaching out to municipalities. They started a few, annual fundraising events. There's a lot more community events and community barbecues, and a lot more of their service clubs and things from different communities are all participating. So each year they're scaling back. So they're currently at about 90%, I think, government funding and 10% fundraising, and that's the plan. Their long-term plan is to scale back and be more like the model that we have here.
If I may add, I think it's important to understand when you're asking, I don't know if you're thinking about this overall operating costs or just operations, if you will, is thinking the fact that on average emissions about an hour and a half, let's say. Fuel for the BK is about $1 million a year, no matter how you look at it. When you talk about operating costs for 2 pilots, a paramedic, a nurse, trained, we have physicians, obviously, that are part of STARS in every base, every location. We provide medical education to the communities, so we actually have 2 RV buses, one in Calgary and one in Grand Prairie, where we're actually out. We were just in Medicine Hat for 2 days, providing clinical education to medical residents. We have the Emergency Link Center, so it's really hard to define. When you're comparing something, maybe even different services, when you're saying like $10 million a base, it's different when you're talking about just per flights, Okay.
It's spread over a whole bunch of operations you do. I understand that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions? Hubie?
I might have missed it along the way, but what is the life expectancy of a helicopter?
It's really, if we had the option of having the BK around, we'd still have it, but there's no more parts in manufacturing. They're not making it at all. So yeah, it's like having a 57 Chev. You can have it forever as long as there's parts and you've got somebody to do with it. When maintenance becomes that expensive and you're searching worldwide parts and waiting days, if not weeks on end, that's just not something we can carry on with.
Lionel?
Yeah, I hope the hard questions are all done. Can you go back one slide?
Yes. One more?
No, that's not fair. That face and that smile. That isn't fair. She just turns me into putty.
That is one of our VIPs, or very important patients.
Yeah. Anyway, I was going to ask a different question about Solus. You recently canceled Solus.
Yes, and I thought of you.
Just wondering what the reasoning behind that was.
Okay. We really did strive, but once we had rolled that out, and I specifically thought about you as well, there was a lot of challenges that we started to find, especially in some significant rural areas like Newell County, where you can go in between dips and things, and if you didn't have self-service, then all of a sudden you didn't have Solus either, because it was only where there was self-service available. So even for myself, I was using it while I was traveling across the province, and then at certain times you would have to reconnect and I wouldn't have it. And then sometimes I'd have to wait for 20 minutes until I was in a self-service area again. So it really pushed us to the fact that we would have to look at having satellite coverage, and we didn't have the means for that, like cost effective, but we just did not have the means to even tackle that. So that is where, it had the potential to be really wonderful opportunity of also working together with everyone, but, cost-wise, it just was not. Being a charitable entity where we're, always fundraising just for the dollars for operations, it wasn't feasible.
Unless that 5G is going to take care of it.
So what was Solus?
Solus was that opportunity to I'm trying to think, what would you call that? Where you
It's, like
have
it's a work alone device.
Yes.
So it was a kind of a proprietary application we tried to help support rural communities, agricultural wise, obviously we've got part of our industry services as we do site registration, work alone monitoring. So that was just an uptick of that.
Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you, as always, for coming and bringing us up to date on what's happening with STARS. And yeah, seems like we've come to know you. Obviously, there isn't a big turnover at STARS, which is always a good thing to know about an organization too, I think. So appreciate friendly and familiar faces always at our table, rather than angry residents, you know, so.
Oh, well, no.
Great.
Appreciate that. Just now that you mentioned that, yesterday was my STARS anniversary, so 13 years.
Ah, lucky
So, thank
13.
you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Jeff, how long have you been with STARS?
9 years.
9 years? Good.
We actually just had a fellow last year retired after 34 years. We just had another guy in October. He's still there, Greg Curtis, for
Yes.
34 years, another paramedic at 33 years, and
Pat.
2 nurses at 30 years. We have, there's some longevity.
Well, those are pretty telling statistics, for sure. So,
Wow.
yeah, the work you do is very critical, pardon the pun, but and important and amazing, truly. So, thank you, and lunch is going to be here if you want to stay for lunch. Not for a little 20 minutes, probably. We're just laughing because, and I've been around on our county council for 15 years, as has Anne-Marie.
Yes.
And in all of that time, we have never had a lunch mess up, right? But 2 weeks ago, and I didn't happen to be here, there was a lunch mess up, and so we didn't have lunch. And you know how food is so important.
Oh,
like people,
absolutely.
It amazes me it's a first world problem, food, right? Like, when am I going to get my next big meal and get out of my road because I didn't eat breakfast or something. I don't know what it is. So I think that's what the chuckling was about anyhow. So
Yes.
yeah. Anyhow, if you would like to join us for lunch, we will probably finish off our meeting and be in there at noon for lunch. So you're certainly welcome.
We welcome that opportunity. Thank you very much, and we will oblige, and we'll just
Okay.
sit here quietly until it
Well,
arrives.
You can sit or you can roam. There's coffee, whatever.
Okay,
whatever
maybe
you
we'll
would
do that.
Yes,
And you can
absolutely.
finish your meeting. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
your
everyone.
time, and
Thank you.
thank you for
You
your
bet.
partnership.
Thank you.
Oh, I did bring you Allied
Some
impact reports again. One's for council, one's for hopefully for your reception area for your residents that really
Perfect.
outlines your giving. So I'll leave these with Mr.
Lane.
Johnson. Thank you so much.
Perfect. All right, we'll go back to committee reports, and I think Brian was going to respond on the Community Response Committee meeting that you
Thanks,
attended
Molly.
for us.
Yeah, first one I've ever been to on behalf of for Molly, and yeah, it was interesting. Lynn Pye Matheson does a good job. FCSS puts these groups together that all participate in our community and the great work they do, and so it was a little overwhelming to hear, you know, how involved, and you don't realize it until you sit around that table about the great work that we have in the various communities that do serve our critical needs within our area. The one overwhelming thing that seemed to resonate with because they did a round table, and at the beginning of the meeting to sort of catch up on what the challenges and things have happened is mental health and the increase in needs for mental health and the drug and addiction. I think the word spike was used, but I don't want to use that too freely. But they've seen an increase in drug use in our area in the last short time, and primarily meth is the one that seemed to come forth more often than others. And they're dealing with those challenges, and they are challenges within within those groups. The other, I just got a few notes here. I'll try to go through them quickly. So Medicine Hat College was there. They're facing, after the budget, they were talking about that they have a 9% cut. It doesn't affect them to a great deal, but it is $9,000 for their annual funding. They talked about, on the immigrant part of it, Alberta receives about 13% of all immigrants that come to Canada. And they are, one of the initiatives that they've done is not only as English as a second language, but focusing it on workplace skills. So using, incorporating their English as a second language, so it's more useful within the different workplaces that these people need to access to be able to get a job and keep a job. And so that is quite remarkable to have that not only English as a second language, but actually focused on those challenges that they have within their workplace and being able to operate there. So, anyways, I took a bunch of notes, and some of it makes sense today, and some of it doesn't. So I'll just apologize ahead of time. So.
The Community Response Committee, though, is a group that makes you feel proud to be part of this community. I know Clarence goes sometimes, or often, for FCSS, and I go for the county, and it is amazing how there are so many support groups within our communities, from churches right through to government agencies, and that committee was formed as a result, I think, of the strike. Not the strike. Was it the strike? Or the E. coli? E. coli shut down. And it's just in place to be called upon when we need it in our community, when there is a crisis. But Lynn, in her social leadership within our community, just thinks it's good to meet occasionally to keep the lines of communication open, and I believe in that too. So it is pretty cool. Clarence?
Actually, Molly, it wasn't Lynn. It was organizations themselves that wanted to make sure they talked with each other.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Lynn just, okay, that's great. We'll do that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was thinking, I don't have many memories. Oh, no, I won't even go there. It's a Don Weisbach story. So, all right. Moving on to what I have, of course, been away a lot of the month of November, RMA, and then another event during the first week, so I don't have a lot to report. I do have a couple of questions, sort of. So, in December, on the 18th is the open house, correct? And also that day is our annual Council MLA MP meeting, which is in Bassano at 6. It's also this year the CP holiday train. So there's conflicts all over the place. I'm going to be late getting to that Bassano annual meeting because I'm going to be involved with a holiday train. But I'm assuming there's going to be most of you at that meeting anyhow, correct? Lots of people attending in Bassano. Yes? Okay. And also, how about the Christmas meeting at or not the Christmas, whatever, this little social gathering at the City Hall? Some people going to that ahead of? It's the 18th. Earlier. It always is the same time. The train has messed it up for me a bit, but there's, as I said, there's lots of you going to be there, so that's good. I think that might be all I had to ask about. Fortis Breakfast, I know a couple of you sometimes get to that. That's another fundraiser for grasslands before our next council meeting over the Fortis building that they share with Torkson, I guess. That's on the 5th, if you are interested in doing something else before you come to council. Also, another question, anybody attending the city Christmas party? Anybody got plans for that? Okay. Lionel? Yeah. Perfect. As I've said before, every now and then I have to defer to a John commitment, and he's committed to something. So I'm going with him that night to that, so I won't be able to attend. So that's perfect. I think that's it. All right, let's get back to our meeting. And yes.
Are you riding the train from Medicine Hat?
I'm going to ride the train from Tilly to Brooks.
Okay, so you're going to speak in Tilly.
I can do Tilly. You bet. Do you want to do Tilly? Or you going to? You were
if
going.
You're going to do it, then I won't do it. I'll go to the other meeting.
Well, I didn't. I knew that you had committed to. I saw your reply to the Dutch or the Bassano meeting.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I didn't commit to it yet. So I can do Tilly because I'll be there anyhow.
That'd be great. Then the county will be represented there.
You bet.
Okay. Good.
You bet. And hopefully it won't be the same night next year, because that's a first. That's a busy day. Okay. Committee reports, post agenda. There were none. Information items. Oh, sorry. Please.
Just functions for council.
Oh, I missed it.
So that would be, what is it, a request for functions of council, item 10.5. SEWA and Newell Regional Solid Waste Management are having that meeting tomorrow. I'm just wondering, is there other members of council besides Councillor Just that are going to be going to that? We do need to RSVP on that if there is others interested in attending.
What time of day is that meeting?
It's at noon. We have lunch first.
And the meeting is just being held here, right? Or
that's correct. They move it around the southern Alberta.
Is it here in the building?
It's in JBS.
Oh, okay.
JBS Center.
Lionel's going to be there, so
I'll be there. Yes.
As a regular, it's a regular meeting.
Right.
Yeah. Good. No.
No, because I'm a member on the committee.
Looks like Lionel's. Thanks for the reminder, so about that. Anything else? Kelly?
I think we all received an email shortly after our last council meeting, a letter.
There's two things I wanted to bring up. Yes, go ahead. Response to it.
Yeah, I wondered if we were going to. I haven't done anything with it other than leave it in my mailbox. I think the fellow's name was Ron Hazelwood or Howard.
It was. Yeah.
Hazelwood?
Yeah.
Okay. It was regarding the motion that Wheatland County passed at their council meeting. And he was proposing that we do the same. I believe that was the gist of the email.
Yes.
So I wondered if we would make a reply from council.
No, that's good. There were two things I had and I left at home. Also the response to Dave Stabler and what we're going to do regarding that too, I think are two things that need to maybe be put on our next agenda so actually something happens. Do you think, or Kelly, are you thinking that this one needs to be taken care of immediately?
I just think maybe if we choose to have a discussion later, we could just respond that we will get back to him just to accept that we have received it maybe for now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you want, what would council like to do? Have a discussion about that right now? Or after lunch, or at a different meeting altogether? Since it wasn't really on the agenda, even so I meant to put it on. What is your wish? The silence is deafening.
I'm going to suggest that we hold off and, but respond to his email saying that we did accept it and council will take it under advisement. Fair enough?
Sure. Probably be good.
Okay.
I think with these things these days.
I'll make a motion that we accept receipt of his letter and take it under advisement.
Which means like take it as information for now?
Sure,
I'm not quite sure what.
Sure, and we will work on it from
I
there.
guess might be curious. Yes, okay. So we will respond saying that we have received the letter and if further discussion ensues, we will keep them up to date. Would that be okay? Yeah. If further discussion ensues. Kelly.
I just want us to present a similar response, unless you all want to respond to him individually. But I think it was addressed to council, so I think we should make a unified response. So
absolutely.
Let's give us time to all put our thoughts out there as a group, and then we will create a unified response. I know your response.
Anne-Marie?
And the part I'm struggling with is that as a municipality, we're non-partisan and we're being asked to respond to a political question. So the way Molly worded it, that we could accept the letter, we're going to consider whether we should respond or not. And I guess that's general enough that I could live with that one.
Pretty wishy-washy. How many people feel that we should be discussing, or this is going to take this into another area, so okay, there's a motion on the floor that says we do want to get back to Mr. Hazelwood to acknowledge receipt of his letter. That's enough? Yeah, acknowledge receipt of his letter. It was a letter we received asking us to, I guess it was to ask for support of the Jason Wilson resolution, so.
We didn't, I thought the letter was from Jason, no, it was from someone else. Okay. About this? No. About the whole city? Oh, right, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do we respond?
If people are not even familiar with the letter, how can we make a motion and vote on it?
Okay. I think the question is, we received a letter, and I'm on Kelly's side, that we should always be responding, making a response. And that's all we are doing here. And I suggested that we could say that we have received the letter, and any further discussion we have, we could keep them up to date on, basically. If that works for Kelly. Okay. So all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. And I also would like to get the Dave Stabler situation, like we were requested also to do something with that, and I don't think we've addressed it, have we? So I think that should go on our next agenda. Or sometime. I'm not suggesting, I mean, the request was involved Foothills Little Bow, correct? So we would have to do something before our January meeting. We are missing our second meeting in January, so that leaves us a couple meetings to have a look at it, see what we want to do with it. That make sense? Anybody have trouble with that? And I'm not, don't want to put any extra weight on staff or anything. I think we've sort of looked at it a little bit already, but I don't know if a decision was ever made. So we could bring it back in. Kevin.
Madam Reeve, we did talk to the Minister of Municipal Affairs at convention as well to let him know of that request from Dave and the public that before any of this takes place, it would be good if they put a requirement in the Act to have a vote of the ratepayers as something that is conditional. And so, I mean, we raised it at that level. I'm not sure, to reiterate it, I guess we could...
Maybe we could just write a letter to Municipal Affairs to formalize what we suggested, Kevin?
So, I mean, they are aware of the request, but it's not gone to Foothills Little Bow, so that's a different process.
It is. And I like that suggestion because we mentioned it at the meeting we had with the minister just last week. So we could do a follow-up, and as odd as it is for, I think, municipality to want more rules in place, we could suggest that that might be something that the minister could look at. And they're looking at the rules right now. Or they're going to reopen the MGA, it would appear. So, any concerns about that request, or are we in favor of this suggestion, I guess? Or do we need to discuss that even at a meeting? Emery.
Repeat the suggestion.
Kevin has been involved with this twice now. I know you talked to some municipal government officials. The concern about if amalgamations were going to take place, that the MGA could actually say that votes of the residents of the municipalities should happen. Kevin, is that basically what?
Yeah, more or less, Mr. Stabler had asked that there be an amendment to the MGA to put in a requirement for a plebiscite or a vote to be done before a municipality can proceed with amalgamation.
Amory.
I understood that part, but are you going to write a letter that we're in favor of doing that?
No, all that we suggested at the meeting was that it came from the ratepayers, and the public would have been at ease more if they knew they would have had a vote on the process. So we weren't taking a position from the county, so if that's what we're going to do, that's a different process. We were just advising the minister of what the feedback was from the public, because we did talk about post-regionalization discussions.
And so we could formalize that in a letter to him saying, because he did at our meeting was curious about the regionalization process. So we could do that as one helpful thing in this Dave's suggestion, I guess. So do we need a motion to do that, I guess, is the question. Do you want to say that the council supported, I don't know, we're not supporting, we're just informing, I guess. We're just informing him, so we don't really need a motion, I don't think. Wayne?
Maybe instead of supporting or whatever, we just maybe submit to the minister an informal, a small report on how things went, including that some of our ratepayers wanted that to be ensured that they had a vote on this. Because
well, I think we could do a follow-up from the meeting that we had. Wayne, did you go to the minister's meeting? No. Guys that were there? Makes sense? Yeah, I think. So I think it's just a follow-up. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Tracy?
So can we send a letter back to Mr. Slaver saying that during our meeting with the municipal affairs that we did bring forward and mentioned his concern, and so then we've replied to him and
CC it? Okay. Sound reasonable? I suggest a motion is important. Do you want me to word it?
I'll make that motion then.
Okay. Teresa makes the motion to do a follow-up letter to Minister Madu regarding regionalization suggestions with a CC to Mr. Stabler. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Anything else on the agenda? There was nothing in camera, I take it, no? Hubie, a question.
Are we still talking about committee reports here? Can I add to what Brian said about safe injection sites?
Safe injection sites?
You mentioned something. Anyway, Safe Communities is thinking about getting somebody in the new year who's been at these sites and explain to us all of the logistics and the problems they're having there. Just to let you know.
Okay. The problems and the successes, or just a report on them, basically?
Just a report on it to see how it's going. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds interesting. All right. Nothing else? We will adjourn our meeting. 12:05.